Welcome to Life, Death, and the Law, presented by the law firm of Deason, Garner, and Hansen, hosted by attorneys Sean Garner and Adam Hansen.
We have Chris Thompson in studio here today. Chris, this is now your third time, I think, being in on the show.
Third time's a charm, maybe.
I was going to congratulate you. You have now successfully been on our show more than anybody else in history.
Wow, what an honor! What an honor!
So you better make it worth it.
Well, if all 8 people are listening, then maybe I'll start to get recognized.
And maybe we can stop
you're that
paying
guy that was on the podcast.
You just start walking down grocery aisles, getting high fives from strangers.
Yeah,
What's up,
I
Chris?
can see it now.
I'm interested, you being an architect, what is the procedure in understanding, okay, now I've got a build. Let's say there's no restrictions on how you move forward with your creativity and your skill and experience. What's the procedure for going forth and designing and building something?
Sure. So it's always referred to, we refer to it as a design problem. So the problem is you need an office and it needs to have 5 offices, a conference room, bathrooms, whatever. It could be a university campus. It could be military base, whatever your need is. How do we solve that through design?
Is this a Chris Thompson method, or is this an architectural method that you guys learn in school?
This is the method. Of course, you've always got your Einsteins and your others that
go outside the box.
Yeah, go outside the box. But the typical method is you'll sit down. We sit down with the client. We hear what their needs are. That's called the program. That's the programming phase. What is it that you need this design to do? What do you need? Problems do you need it to solve? Then you look at what's your envelope to design within. So what's your site? Is your site hilly? Is your site flat? Does your site have only one point of entry? So you look at all those things. Which way does it face? North, south, east, west? How do you want to orient it to the street? So you start to gather all this information. So the first step of the process is really creating a series of lists. We call that the owner's program requirements. And then that's what we design to. And then along the way, so we start with that. Then we take those spaces. We have a relative idea of how large those spaces are. And then we'll develop kind of a diagram of the space, how it might flow, where these spaces might sit. I need my office to be, one of our important requirements is Adam's office needs to be real close to Sean's office so that they can communicate quickly. Maybe his office needs to be as far away as possible.
Yeah.
Sean's office.
Let's put that one.
Right. So so as we start to diagram these spaces, we start, maybe it's a bubble diagram, maybe it's a series of boxes on the sheet. We start to move them around. So those are our puzzle pieces. To solve the problem?
So is this physical? Is it on paper and you're clipping out this room, this office, and I'm moving it around? It used
to be, believe it or not, the firm I worked for in Tucson the designer there, Dave Burns, great architect. He would actually cut foam blocks and then arrange them. Apple foam. It was this really cool, hard, dense foam, and you'd cut it on this hot wire.
Oh, cool.
If you haven't been burned by a Apple foam hot wire, you're not probably an architect. But so he would do it that way, and you'd shuffle these blocks around.
Okay.
Then we do it on paper. We sketch it, sketch it out. Now we can go right into the computer. So we can go right in the computer, create these boxes, move them around, shuffle them, give them dimension, give them height, give them scale. And that starts to form up a floor plan. And we may develop 3 or 4 options. Then we'll sit down with the client and say, hey, here's what we've developed. What do you think? Does this look like, are we missing any spaces? Then as the architect, we'll put in spaces that you might not think of. We need an electrical room. We need a data room. We need, this many janitors, closets to serve these spaces. If it's 2-story, we should have one on the first floor, second floor. So all those kinds of things just from experience that we have. Present that to client. They go, yeah, I love option C is the one I really like. Well, great. And we'll push and pull on that plan until we get it just right. Make sure it meets the parameters of the site. Do we have enough room for parking? Do we have enough room for on-site water retention and all of those things? Then when we feel like we've got the floor plan pretty comfortable, then we get to how does it work vertically? Is it a single story building? Is it a 2-story building? Is it, where are our views if there are any? Where's the sun? How's the sun moving? So that's the wall. We're going to want a lot of windows. So maybe we want to orient the offices towards that. And so it's a really, it's fun. I have a really fun career. I'm it's a good time because you're creating these things and then presenting them to people. Sometimes they love it right off the bat, and sometimes it takes 6 or 7 get-togethers and push and pulls, and we'll make suggestions, but ultimately it's the owner's building. It's not the architect's building. So we want you to be happy.
I'm sure you've seen, especially more recently, with the advancement of technology and AI and everything, that it becomes, you have so many more tools to get to the end product quicker and to accomplish what you need to get done. But having gone through the rudimentary aspect of it with the foam blocks, would you, if you could, bypass the foam blocks, and if you could have the technology right up front, would you just say, yeah, I'd rather just start with the technology, I could have built so much more? Or do you think having built with foam blocks first created a foundation and some type of either character or appreciation that you now use to build off of and now appreciate more what the technology provides?
So you can have the greatest idea in the world for a design, but if I can't communicate that to you in a way that you understand it, it never leaves my mind. So the foam blocks and the 3D renderings and everything, those are communication tools for me to communicate to you what I envision, and so that we can have now that same common vision. Some people can look at a plan. An architect may not need the blocks or anything because we've done it enough and we're practiced in it enough that we can kind of see it in 3D as we're drawing it in 2D, but you might not be able to see it that way. I work with clients all the time that can't read plans. They just don't know how. It's like reading sheet music.
Mm-hmm.
You give me sheet music, I know if the notes go up or down, but I'm not hearing it in my head. So if I go over a floor plan with you, you might look at it and go, I don't know. But if I build a 3D model, whether that's foam blocks or cardboard or a computer rendering, and walk you through it, now you're getting it. Oh, okay. I see. I enter the lobby. The lobby's this big. I can turn here and see this. I can turn here and see Adam's office. Martine, this is his space. Okay, I'm starting to see it now. So if I can't communicate it to you, then I've failed. That's the ultimate reason for all of those tools. Secondarily, it's for us to explore, what if we change the roof line? What if we do this? What if we change this? And fortunately, with the computers and what they're able to do and how quick they're able to operate, we can do that pretty quickly. We can get to something that I can communicate to you pretty fast. So my predecessor, Barry Patterson, great architect, he would do maybe a dozen projects a year, because it used to be you'd have to draw it out. Mm-hmm. You'd have to make a blue line. That's where blueprints come from. Blue line. Pat, take that, drive that over to the engineer's office, sit down with him, go over it. He would lay a piece of vellum over it, trace it, do his design, send it back. Oh yeah, this was all by hand. Sit down with you, the client, and you go, I want to move this room over here. Take the paper out, erase. We have electric erasers.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. No, it was awesome. And so when I went into school, it was kind of in between that mode of delivering a set of drawings and kind of the computers and AutoCAD were catching on and taking off. So he would do about a dozen projects a year. Last year we did, I think we tapped 50 because we're able to produce so much quicker.
Yeah. So
we can get from that first initial sit down with the client to a finished set of drawings into the city for permit in, a tenth of the time that it used to take.
And it's interesting because I can see pros and cons with that. One is the pro, obviously, is we want to get things built quickly and we always want more. We're never satisfied.
Right.
The con is sometimes you continue going on to the next thing and you don't slow down to appreciate life, or at least build the character and just general, I guess, work ethic that builds people. And because computers are doing the heavy lifting. Let me give you one example. I saw on this YouTube video the other day where this guy created this stove that he was able to use old recycled oil and it was dripping inside of this. It was just a typical stove that used to be a wood burning stove.
Mm-hmm.
And he had fashioned it so it was burning this oil really hot. It was 600 degrees, and the stove was warming his shop, and the oil he was getting from the tractors and the trucks that he was driving. So it was nothing, right? It was a byproduct that he had to get rid of. And I was thinking, holy smokes! I chopped wood all summer long, so we could burn it all winter long to keep warm. And we had a ton of extra oil because my dad he drove a logging truck. So, he went through a ton of oil. So we had like these 55-gallon drums of used oil that we'd have to take and get recycled. And we could have done this instead. And how much easier my life had been. And as I thought for a moment, chopping wood, my dad would always tell me, and I hated it when he said it, but it was so true. He's like, wood warms you twice. Once when you chop it and once when you burn it. And so, but the process of chopping wood built me physically, and it built this work ethic that I carry on today, and I can accomplish most things that I set my mind to because I chopped wood. Would I have that if I was just able to say, hey, let's grab another gallon from the 5-gallon drum and put it on the stove and it's going to warm us for the next week? Wouldn't have had that. And so I get to the point where is technology taking away from the development of us as humans and our character and what we need to actually obtain our real potential in life that's going to carry on to the life hereafter?
Well, that technology affords us the ability to explore. So when we present a design to you, because we can so quickly alter forms and change roof lines and move spaces around that used to take pulling out another sheet of paper and erasing and then driving, take this. You can now just very quickly push, pull, shape, change, make it wood, make it block, make it stucco, whatever we need to do.
Step into the room.
Well, let's walk
3D,
in. Okay, let's, put some
Mm-hmm.
goggles on. We'll walk you through it,
Change the wallpaper.
So quickly we can do that now. So what it does is it allows you to be more creative because now I can put more time rather than trying to get it down into a form that I can communicate to you. Now, in the same time, I can show you 10 versions of it that I've spent time on. You know what? If we kick this roof up just a little bit more, we've got room for a clear story window in here. And wouldn't that be great to bring some natural light into that center hallway where all these cubicles are? And so by just a couple clicks, we can do that. The con of that is people wonder why it takes so long. All you got to do is push a few buttons and a building pops out.
Yeah.
That's where the human element comes in. Okay, now that we have a form, I've presented to you your floor plan. You like it. Presented you with the look of the building. Think it's fantastic. Now we have to make it function. Now we have to make it work. So then you start to apply layers of structural. How are we going to support this roof that now flies out over here? How are we going to carry this carport that's over here? And here we could do it with steel. We could do it with wood. We could do it with masonry. Okay, so you start to apply structure to it. We're going to need some extra beefy members here because we got a large span. And so you start to let's explore how we're going to cool those spaces now. We could just plunk some air conditioning units on the roof. That would be fine. That would destroy our form that we've created. So maybe there's an alternative. Let's look at split systems where they're in closets or in attics or different things so that maybe they're not just sitting up there on the roof. But, a good example of that is the new main library down by the Catholic high school. There was a lot of effort put into the form and shape of that building, and it's a beautiful building.
Who designed that?
I want to say it was a firm out of Salt Lake City, if I'm not mistaken. They designed that, and it's this beautiful form. And then the mechanical engineer came along and said, well, we need large mechanical units to cool this large volume of space. Let's put them here on this roof. And if you drive down there, there's huge mechanical units up there that are just completely consuming the form and shape of the building. So those things need to work in concert, and we'll do that. We'll from the mechanical engineer, we have these. I was just having a conversation the other day. We can drop a mechanical unit 10 inches if you go with this curb design. Then we're getting into the weeds here, but the curb is what the air conditioning unit sits on the roof. It's called a curb. We can go with this height. That'll produce less noise, less vibration. The people inside won't hear it as much, but we could reduce it to this. The trade-off might be there's some vibration, but we don't have to have the outside parapet up 12 inches higher, which saves 12 inches by, 400 lineal feet.
Coming up, more thought-provoking conversations on life, death, and the law right after this. You're listening to Life, Death, and the Law, presented by Deason, Garner, and Hansen, the law firm that has been voted Yuma's best 6 years in a row.
400 lineal feet, and so we're exploring all those options. What's in the best interest of the owner, cost-wise? Because ultimately, nobody comes in and says money's no object.
Right.
Unfortunately, Elon's not a client of mine, so nobody comes in and says, "I don't care what it costs." Their first thing out of their mouth is, "I care what it costs."
Sure.
So we have our obligation is to give them a design that meets their functional needs, but then also meets their budget. And you can do that. That doesn't cost any more. You don't have to pay more for the architect to do that. That's just what we're doing. We're trying to be efficient. We're not trying to be wasteful, but we are trying to, at the same time, serve a function, but also create something that's beautiful, that serves your needs, but also lends itself to the character of the place. So it's this balancing act all the time of the form, the function, and the budget.
Are you able to do structural engineering? When we did our house plans, they did all the plans and like, oh, well, now you got to find a structural engineer to do all that. I'm like,
make sure the roof doesn't
how many
come
engineers
down.
I need, man? Can't you just do it all? So are you able to do that as an architect, or do you have to have additional?
So I'm a big believer in hiring the experts in those things. It's cheap insurance. The architect could do it, but that's like asking the guy who does your brakes to rebuild your engine.
I see.
It's just, he knows how engines work. I know enough about structural to know that beam's going to be about this size, and I can run some numbers and confirm that.
Yeah.
But there's liability that comes with that.
Yeah.
There's risk that comes with that. So on any typical project, you have the architect, and he's kind of the lead. So he's developing and guiding the team towards this goal of a beautiful building that serves the owner's function that's within budget. So on his team is a structural engineer, a mechanical, so that's HVAC engineer, a plumbing engineer. In Yuma, it usually involves a fire protection engineer, an electrical engineer, and a civil engineer. The civil engineer designs the flat work, make sure the water flows off the site to your retention basins and that water's not coming back into the building, designs the sewer lines and all.
Yeah, I'd always wondered what a civil engineer did, like what their role was.
There you go. They're trained in designing the flat work. So designing how the sidewalks work in concert with the street outside. And it's actually a pretty complicated thing to figure out. I can do it, but it's not what I specialize in. I'm not an expert at it. So I believe we should have an expert, because if water comes into your building, it doesn't matter how beautiful it is. I've failed. So
Right.
I don't want to do that. In Yuma, we're a little interesting. I'll precursor kind of things that I hate. In Yuma, there's kind of a culture of engineers practicing outside of their discipline. So you'll have civil engineers designing architecture. You'll have different engineers working outside of what they were trained to do, because the law allows them to do that.
Yeah.
That
So you
doesn't
think there should be
necessarily
more
mean
laws?
What's that?
Think there should be more laws and regulation then?
I think when you're talking about public buildings, when you're talking about buildings that could house hundreds of people, I think in the public's interest, I don't know that it necessarily takes a law, but it takes common sense to know you want the best people doing those designs. And so if the civil in Yuma, there are several civil engineers that practice architecture and sell themselves as designers, as architects. That's a disservice. That's a disservice to the public. That's a disservice to you as the client, because you might not know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and so you're not getting the
I don't know the
expertise.
difference. So you're getting an engineer.
You're getting an engineer
It's doing the architectural work.
that's also designing your building.
So, because an engineer, I would think he has the qualifications to understand what is going to stand and what's going to hold up and what materials are necessary and all the measurements. And an architect, in my very limited understanding of the difference, is more of the aesthetics.
Correct. Simplified, explanation. The architect is also responsible to make sure that life safety needs in the building are met. Are there enough exits?
Engineer doesn't do that.
Safe? Typically, that's not their thing.
Oh,
So you're a lawyer and you specialize in estate planning. If I came to you and I say, hey, I want you to defend me in a murder trial, could you do it?
Yeah. And that's in my mind, that's the analogy
Sure.
I was drawing.
Sure.
and then I'd visit you in jail.
Sure. Yeah. And then I'd say, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So
could
it's
do it, but we
similar. It's similar to that. Can you do it? Yes. Is that what you want to bet your $1 million, $2 million, $4 million, $10 million project on? Maybe for an architect. And it doesn't cost anymore. Typically, we're not the cheapest in town, but in a lot of cases, you don't want the cheapest in town because the architecture and engineering fees, the design is what's so crucial. Those construction documents are what's so crucial to ensure that once it goes into construction, there aren't conflicts. You don't have water coming into your building. You don't have a roof that sheds water onto a roof that wasn't designed to take that amount of water.
Yeah,
there's a lot of places
where the rain spout goes out right where the ticket center is.
There you go. And you saw what they did. They took it underground and got it out there. But there you go. So there's a lot of places to stumble in the design process and the construction process. When it moves into construction, they're expensive to fix.
Yeah.
So one of the things we tell our clients is, yes, our fees are not as low as that other guy. It might just be a few $1,000s more, but I guarantee you the quality of the construction drawings will save you 10 times that in the construction process.
Yeah.
So, and that's true. I'm not trying to,
No.
promote myself.
But we live by that policy ourselves. In fact, we see it every day. Yesterday, I had a client come in and they presented a will, and it was not witnessed. It was notarized. And so it looked great. It looked like somebody who either got online and got a good template for a will, went and prepared it, and it stated who they wanted to act as their executor, or we call them personal representatives. So they have the control over administering the estate and who they wanted to receive it. And this person was unmarried with no children. And so it's really important because if you want it all to go to your children, then the state default statutes tend to go that way. But if you have a blended family, or if you want it to go disproportionately to someone else, in this case, his life partner, then the will has to stand up. Otherwise, it's going to go to the next of kin.
Right.
And in this case, we've yet to find out what's really going to happen. There's a potential we could find other witnesses, but it's going to be a whole lot of work right now. And he probably spent $400 on this will.
Okay.
And if he would have spent literally 10 times that, $4,000, 100 times that, $40,000.
Which he never would.
Yes. He would. His estate is probably around $400,000. If he would have spent $40,000 on it, he would be in a much better position than his family is being left in now, because we don't know who it's going to go to, but I'm fairly certain it's not going to go to the one he wants.
And they'll likely lose what he thought he was saving in the will development. They'll lose significantly more than that in the probate.
And that's only the money aspect, not to mention they've lost him and they're mourning, and now they're going to go through this stressful situation of
now it's a fight.
Court, potential being on the outs with the family, and loss of sleep at night, their health, all of that goes along with it. It's not just the money, right? It's how much do you value a good night's sleep?
Right. So when you're going to do a will, you want to find an estate attorney. You don't want to go to a trial attorney to do your will, or to just an online service. It's true in everything. You get what you pay for. So when you're looking to design a building, it would make sense to go to people that design buildings
all the time. Sure.
Yeah. And so that's not to say that civil engineers aren't able to do it. Yuma will show you they do it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the best? I'm going to tell you it's not. It's not the best. And the product tends to show for itself.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of that doesn't happen in a lot of places outside of Yuma. It's kind of a Yuma.
Yuma is a land of opportunity because there is a lack of professionals. And with
Correct.
a lack of professionals, there's a lack of competition.
Sure.
And with that comes we have to settle for what we can find. When there's competition, it increases the quality because now you're competing against, if you're not going to produce this quality, I'm going to go to this other guy that's going to do it. Where
that's if quality is important to you. If the only thing that's important to you is cost, that's a completely different.
Well, but competition reduces cost at the same time
absolutely.
Of potentially increasing quality.
Absolutely. So there's a balance in that. You don't need to go and pay 10, 12, 15% of your construction budget to hire an architect or engineering team. So nationally there's pretty much an average of what that costs.
Okay.
So we can't go and just completely blow the doors off and charge somebody, an outrageous fee. Why? I won't get the work. And I'm very much a believer in, I don't need to retire off of your project. So if I do a good job and I do it at a reasonable fee that you're happy with, you'll come to me for your next one. And then you'll come to me for your one after that. And I've been blessed to have a long list of return clients that keep me busy. Working with new clients is always exciting and fun. But there is you got to convince them that you're worth it. You have to convince them that you're worth it. And so we do a lot of things that are included in our fee that other firms might charge additional fees for. And we do that because we think they're important. They're critical to the project, like the 3D modeling and the rendering and all of that. Other firms, you might pay additional for that. It might not be in their basic fees, but it's going to give you assurance that if you're trusting me with $2 million of your budget, that you're getting $2 million worth of product. If you have to pay $10,000, $40,000, $100,000 to correct construction conflicts in the field because the drawings were slapped together for a cheap fee, you're going to remember that and you're not going to come back to me. So it's my responsibility to do it affordably, meet the budget, have as little construction. No drawings are perfect. So, and it's in our contract, actually, you can't expect perfection. But we can certainly, by doing a thorough experience process of delivering the drawings, we can certainly minimize construction conflicts, which is where the dollars really are. To change out a beam, you might be talking $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 if it didn't quite meet with the wall correctly because we didn't develop that part of the design. We just said, throw a beam in and get this thing out the door. I don't have enough fee for it, blah, blah, blah. So, and unfortunately that happens. That happens in Yuma where there's some of our competitors kind of
as attorneys, we're regulated by the state bar of Arizona. Where you practice, you've got a bar, and we call it a self-regulated profession. And so really those regulations come in the form of ethics rules. Right. And going back to your comparison of us doing a murder trial, yes, we can do it with our licenses, but we would probably be opening ourselves up to huge ethics problems because there's a rule that says if you're practicing kind of outside your scope in a territory that you often don't practice in, then you need to kind of have help. You need to be bouncing your ideas off somebody, or you could be liable for violating the ethics
that's
rule.
A perfect example of why you use those specialized engineers. When I'm designing the structure, I could, but I want an expert to know, and they're part of my
liability.
Team.
Sure.
Exactly.
So you guys are regulated, I'm guessing, by kind of ethics rules as well.
Well, yes, we do. We also have the state registrar that manages complaints and investigates complaints.
The
and
contractor, the registrar of contractors. Oh, they do that
so
as
there's
well. Okay.
There's a technical board of registration. So
for architects,
for architects, land surveyors, civil engineers, structural engineers. We're managed under a different board, and so complaints are reviewed and those kinds of things, and they happen. Yeah. And so we're also regulated. That one of the, we have the city building officials who get an extra set of eyes on the plans to, and they'll call us on things that, hey, I'm not sure if this is safe. Can you provide some additional information? And then we dig into it, and maybe we have to make some adjustments. And so I appreciate their review. Good example is we did a project. We had a performance specification for a portion of the project, which means we don't detail it, we don't design it. The contractor hires a specialized engineer to design it and do that. That contractor turned those drawings into the city. The city did a spot check on some of the calculations and determined that this was in failure.
Coming up, more thought-provoking conversations on life, death, and the law right after this.
Hey, Yuma, Dave Ramsey here. If you listen to our show or know anything about us, then you know I only recommend products and services I trust and I believe in. That's why when it comes to protecting your assets and planning for your loved one's future, you've got to call my friends Sean Garner and Adam Hansen at the law firm of Deason, Garner, and Hansen. I encourage you to take the first step and attend a free, no-pressure seminar and learn all of your options. The firm of Deason, Garner, and Hansen has been educating the Yuma community for over 40 years, and this is the only area of law that they practice. Sean and Adam believe in giving free education to help people make smart decisions about their assets and help them leave a legacy for their family that they can be proud of. Schedule a free personal consultation today. Call 783-4575 or visit yumaestateplanning.com.
You're listening to Life, Death, and the Law, presented by Deason, Garner, and Hansen, the law firm that has been voted Yuma's best 6 years in a row.
So this structure would fail.
Wow.
And called that civil engineer practicing structural engineering into their office to say, you need to defend these numbers. And he had missed a wind load. And had that structure been built, and in this case, it was a fence, a tall fence, like a backstop for a baseball field. Had that been built the way it was designed, once the wind reached a certain level, that thing was coming down. And so you need those checks, you need those balances. And so it's important when you're designing a building that you have the right people doing it.
Your dad was a banker growing up, but did you have any experience you have a lot of friends that are in construction. And so did you have any experience growing up by chance before you went into architect? Because this is a common complaint that I hear. I have relatives. I have my wife's family is deep into the construction world here in Yuma. And so oftentimes as I would walk job sites, the common complaint is the architects don't know what they're doing.
Right.
They don't know the real, like when you're really here, or else they wouldn't design it like this.
Sure. And there's probably a little bit of truth to that, but there doesn't have to be. We do quite a bit and spend quite a bit of time in drawing those details. And we actually, in order to get those right, we'll reach out to specific contractors. If we're trying to do a structural steel connection, we'll actually reach out to them and say, hey, this is what we're trying to accomplish. How do you think we should do that? You know, and so they'll provide input that then ends up in the plans and then makes it easier for them to build. But again, you can't detail and draw every connection and every obstacle and difficulty as you're building in 3D space. So you're going to encounter conflicts. One of the things we do is once the drawing is out, the contractors are required to do shop drawings. And so the steel contractor will then kind of regurgitate back to us his understanding of how we think that structure is going to be built. And then in that, he'll make suggestions, modifications, discussions.
That's good.
So there's a place for that. By the time it hits the ground and it's being erected, that's not when you want to hear about, well, shoot, now we can't get to the back of this bolt because it's covered up by this other plate. You want to, and so that's why we go through those checks and balances. So there's the architect's drawings, which include the structural engineer's drawings. Those will go then to a contractor. The contractor then reviews those and he send it out to the steel guy, the electrical guy, the plumber, the electrician. They all look at those and then they come back to us with questions, suggestions. Hey, I think we could save some money if we did it this way? Do you have any issue with that? Can we, because we've realized now we're not going to be able to get to this bolt, does it make sense to shift this beam out 2 inches? What ramifications are that? So yeah, we absolutely appreciate that insight. So we'll look at it and go, oh, you know what? Yeah, we didn't account for this pop out that's now going to block access to that for future maintenance or service. And so, let's make an adjustment. It's really a concert. It's a team effort. And the contractors, I don't see them always in a
Adversarial role.
Yeah. Contrarian or anything. It really is.
I was just going to ask.
We're all working for the same person.
Sure.
Exactly.
I want to get hired again. You, Joe contractor, want to get hired again.
Yeah.
So let's work together to
I wondered
make
if there
this
wasn't
client happy.
certain, I mean, when you get a lot of lawyers together, there's egos, right?
Oh, sure.
So that's why we tend to not want to be together.
Yeah.
So is there
Funny because certain lawyers love being together because they just love slapping each other on the back, and other lawyers don't. Adam and I tend to be along the lateral, and we don't like to be around a whole bunch of other lawyers. We like to do what we do, and I welcome feedback on my contracts, especially on wills and trust, because if they think there's going to be a problem, I want to examine that. But I found that people who either, I don't know, that feel offended if you bring something up, they maybe have a little less confidence, and so they jump directly into that defensive mode, and they think they've got to overcompensate and become defensive. Whereas I really just want it to work, and I'm comfortable that I've done it enough times that if I'm missing something, please point it out to me. I know that I'm competent in general, but I'm also fallible, and I want to understand where those errors are so I can correct them. But I found that, yes, in large groups of attorneys, when we go to continuing education courses, people never want to speak out about what their concerns are in their practice because they never want to.
You don't want to look like you don't know.
Make it obvious that they don't know all the answers. And that is a huge weakness.
I think, and that's what I was getting to. So I think that's maybe the general idea or sense that I get with professionals as a whole. If we're dealing with investment advisors and things, there's a certain professional level. I think that when you're at that level, there's just a lot of egos going on, and we don't really deal with. We're not in the drama. So I'm curious, here in town in Yuma, do you get a sense of ego when you're dealing with these contractors, or is it pretty close knit kind of relationships that you have with these contractors and going back and forth?
I think it's as you would expect. There's a level of camaraderie because we're all in the business.
In the fight.
Yes, we're all in the fight, but there's always going to be that level of they're your competition. So you want to be helpful, you want to be cordial, you want to be all those things, but you also want to be, you're always a little bit guarded.
On guard.
That's the architect contractor relationship.
Yeah.
Architect to architect, I've adopted a view that if you and your firm can make me and my firm better, let's do it. Let's talk. Let's get together. And we do that all the time. So we partner with firms, out of town firms, on larger scale projects or projects that require a design expertise that I don't have. Mm-hmm. I could practice on your project, but you may not want that. So when a large scale project comes out for a request for proposal for a large scale project, many times I've teamed up with other firms that have that expertise, that we know Yuma and we know the design process and we can facilitate that. But maybe I don't know exactly everything that goes into a police evidence storage facility. But my good friend has a firm in Tucson who's done 12 of them.
Yeah.
So I'll call her up and say, hey, there's this project. Would you like to team up? And so we do that all the time. They call us, hey, there's a project in Yuma. We want to have you involved. So that's been a great relationship. And I learn a ton observing. It'd be like if you went to another estate planner's office and saw how they run things and how they interact with their clients and with their staff. You'd probably learn some things, or so it's helpful. I see it from that light.
Yeah.
What
and we
can I
do
gain
get
from
that opportunity from time to time when we go to these organizations where there's basically national organizations that are for estate planners specifically, and they talk about how their practice goes and how clients have reacted to certain types of plans. And so we bounce ideas off of one another that way. And yeah, it's invaluable in order to do that. There's one other thing that I just wanted to bring up before we run out of time here, and that is that there's been multiple studies where professors have done quantity over quality type applications, and they have found over and over again that there is never a substitute for experience. For example, it was a photography class, and one half of the class, or maybe it was another hour of a class, so a different set of students, was given the assignment. You bring in one picture, that will be your grade. I don't care how many pictures you take, you bring in one picture, and depending on how good that photo is, that's your grade. And then there's another hour group of students that their assignment is bring in 100 photos. And as long as you bring in 100 photos, you're going to get an A. And then at the end, they compare and they find which photo is the best. And inevitably, it comes from the group that brings in 100 photos. And that had nothing to do, that was not in the requirements that it be a good photo. It's just taking photos over and over again.
Getting better and better and better.
Yeah, you find where the lighting's good. You find where, what captures the eye after the fact. And after, you just go, and that experience helps. They did the same thing with a pottery class. Bring in one pot. That's all you got to do. Make sure that pot is perfect, though. Another one, bring in 100 pots, and they compare the two. The classes that do 100 always have the better pots. And so you doing 50 projects, not only is it helpful in, creating more buildings for Yuma, but it makes you that much better of an architect.
Sure. And architecture's it's an experience game. Right? They used to say it's an old man's game. I haven't know enough fantastic, successful women architects that it's an experience game for sure, 100%. When you get that license and now you're an architect, yay! But you still don't know the first thing about how to get a project from A to B, and so I'll be the first to tell you I still learn, and that's why I it's so invaluable to see how other firms are doing things. One of the reasons I travel, I want to see how they solved that design problem. There's never one answer,
right?
There's 50 answers. They all might be equally successful, but which one's the right one for this project? And so if you want to go out and absorb, okay, well, how did they solve that? And how did they solve that? And that was a failure. I want to make sure I stay away from that. And so it's just invaluable to expose yourself to how other people are doing things. Always.
Are there firms that you know of that they're smaller, but they put themselves out as, I only work on one project at a time.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a perfectionist.
Correct.
And we get that too. And in fact, we've been kind of labeled as, this trust factory, right? We put out a lot of trusts as if that's a bad thing. But going back to my example, it's been demonstrated over and over again that the more you do it, the better you get.
Right.
And so as much as you want to focus on one project and have it be perfect, experience has shown that the more you do, the better you're going to be, even if you're doing multiple of it.
And there's firms out there that do design build. So they're the architect and the contractor. So they're out building their own details that they've drawn. And the learning experience from that is, we drew that wrong, or we could have done it this way, or we drew it that way and it was built exactly like that. And so, but they might only do a few projects a year because you can't be out on the job site for 4 or 5 hours a day and still produce 50 projects a year.
But it sounds like it sounds like in that work model that you're talking about it to me. I hear you to say or speak about it in a favorable light, like that's kind of like a good thing to do.
It could be if you're
not interested in money.
It's probably, it probably doesn't work in Yuma. It lends itself very well to residential
Okay. Yeah.
And in Yuma, we don't have the level of
Bandwidth.
the residences being built that would require that level of care. So
When Sean was talking about, we do a lot of truss work, and because that tends to be one of the best ways to do your estate plan. You don't do a lot of residential, if any, right? You basically focus on commercial.
Yeah, we don't do residential. I have some partnerships in town, good residential designers that when somebody calls me and says, "Hey, I'm looking for a house plan," you know what?
Go that guy.
Give this guy a call. He's great.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll even help you sometimes develop the preliminary plan and then let him take it from there because he's set up for that. His shop works in that. So they have all the details. They have everything they need. I'm commercial and institutional architecture. So designing an office building for me is second nature. You come to me with a house, it's a little, the codes are different. The structure is different. The needs are different. And so it takes on a little different level. I've done them. I've done them for close friends. Most of those are still my friends after, but it's a different animal. It's hard to explain unless you're in it, but it is a different animal, residential design versus commercial.
Hey, thanks for coming on the show again.
You bet. Thanks
Always
for
a
inviting me.
pleasure.
Oh, it's so fun.
Yeah. We'll have you next month, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so. I'll be back.
Hey.
Assuming the public will have me.
Yeah, we'll see.
Get any
We'll
hate
see what the
mail, let me
response is
know.
to this, and we'll let you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
If you have questions or want to know more about something that was discussed today, please call the law firm of Deason, Garner, and Hansen at 928-783-4575 or visit yumaestateplanning.com. If you have questions or want to know more about something that was discussed today, please call the law firm of Deason, Garner, and Hansen at 928-783-4575 or visit yumaestateplanning.com.